Hello and welcome to the Venue Success Podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah Caffee, and our theme in season 2 is Tools of the Trade, the pros behind the process. And today I am joined by none other than the amazing Shannon Underwood, the Vice President of Wedding MBA. So excited to have you on the show today, Shannon.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into the fun content for today, you know what time it is. It's time for Crazy Stories of Tirzah because people have lost their minds. Okay, so today is just a short story. And, every week is so funny. I'm like digging into the history of crazy things that have happened in my brain, right? 32 years of stories. And I'm like, man, I should have been writing these down all along. And literally right before we popped on, I was kind of going back and forth between a story. And so today, this is a bit of a heavy one, but I think it's also something that's very relatable to wedding pros. But planning a wedding is so incredibly stressful for families. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And I know we all have these kinds of stories, but this one kind of took it to the next level. We had this sweet, sweet bride, and it always seems to happen this way, who had a dad that we could tell from the very beginning was going to be trouble. And one day she called me and she was just bawling her eyes out. And she was like, Tirzah, I don't know what to do. I had to get a restraining order against my dad. We were having, I don't know if they were having a big family meeting about the wedding or what specifically kind of spurred this, but it was part of the planning process. And he got so angry at her, he pulled a knife on her throat.
Wow,
And
that's scary.
she absolutely scary. And she was just bawling. And she's like, I had to get a restraining order. I cannot have my dad at my wedding anymore. And she's like, can you guys help me keep him out? Well, first of all, no. I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. But I was like, well, here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to get some extra police here that day. We have access, obviously, to security officers. But I'm like, I think we need to have the police involved here. And so this was just a really sad thing that guests are having to pull in. We have a gated property. So, of course, it was a bit easier for us to monitor who's coming in the front gate. But it was one of those situations where we had to have printed off pictures of this guy. All of the staff had to have it on their phone. We're trying to make sure that he doesn't get in. My husband, he went on Amazon and got all of the security garb, the security hat, security shirt. And of course, we had the police there as well. But it was coming into a concert or something like that, right? Where you have all these police officers around. And that's the way that guests had to come into this poor girl's wedding because she was so terrified of her dad. And of course, he knew where the wedding was going to be and all of that. And it's just man, I always giggle. I'm like, people just think, oh my gosh, weddings are such, so romantic, so wonderful, the happiest day of your life. And I'm like, you don't want to tell this to everyone, but it's I don't know necessarily that that's the happiest day of your life. I'm pretty sure when I held my first child, that was one of the happiest days of my life.
Yeah.
But we're all in the business of selling that story, right? This is going to be the best day ever. And this sweet girl, you could just tell it was a terrible day for her. She was just in fear the whole entire time. But I mean, we did our best to help her have the best day that she could. But yeah, anyway, that's our story.
That's hard. That's hard.
People really have lost their mind. Have you heard the statistic that planning a wedding is they say one of the top 10 most stressful things that you will do in your relationship? And I'm like, it should not be that way. It really should not. You're planning a dinner party, people. This just seems ridiculous. So anyway, okay, there's my depressing story for today. They're not always that, pulling a knife on you, but we gotta, I think the thing is I love to pull the veil aside just a little bit and unsexify. Is that a word? Do that to people that are even considering getting into the venue space or the wedding space. Cause it's sometimes these people, you become their therapist. You can very easily get into that point where it's she's calling the owner crying on my shoulder. And I think that there is an important place for empathy.
Yeah.
And just kind of going above and beyond in these situations. But okay, let's swing it back around to what the topic of today. So Shannon Underwood, I've been coming to the Wedding MBA, I can't even remember how long, and just in the last couple years, been able to be on your speaker panel, which has been an honor. But Shannon, like I said, she's the vice president of the Wedding MBA. She is in charge of recruiting and training new speakers. She sells exhibit booths. She designs marketing materials for the convention and another 100 other things I know, plates that she spins on a daily basis. And she lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. She's married and she has two kiddos. We were both just kind of commiserating about sending our sons off out of the nest and going to college, and so happy that they are happy. So similar stages of life for sure. But I had messaged Shannon, I don't know, a month or so ago, and I was like, I need to squeeze you into this season because we've got Wedding MBA coming up here. At the time of the recording of this, the Wedding MBA is coming up here in a couple months. And I really feel like it's important for people to now, if you've been in the industry for any number of years, you know about the Wedding MBA. We all know about it. But I know that I have a lot of newer venue owners that listen to the podcast. So I just want to kind of give you a little overview of what it is and kind of the ins and outs of all of it. So happy to have you here today, Shannon.
Thank you so much. I am
Yeah.
excited to talk about Wedding MBA and the industry and can't wait to get started.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's just start with a big generic question. And I know that it is a very broad question, but in general, like as you're planning this, and I know it's kind of like for those of us as business owners, we're like, who's your ideal client? What is your objective of X, Y, or Z? So with the Wedding MBA, kind of like what is your main objective with that? And kind of pairing that with like, why should wedding pros attend this event?
Yeah. So wedding pros should come to Wedding MBA because we're never done learning and making connections. So I think the connections are equally as important. So you're not just sitting in a classroom the whole time. You're talking to people that are already, like you said, in this stage of their life and this stage of their business. And you can learn from people that are more experienced and also help guide some people that are maybe newer to the industry. So as long as you come in humble and ready to learn and grow, you're going to get a lot out of the Wedding MBA.
I love that. So, is there a certain type of like pro that you feel like the show is geared towards? Like, is it geared towards more veteran people, newer business owners? Kind of how do you view that part?
Yeah, good question. So our average attendee has been in business about 7 years. So that
Mm-hmm.
means we definitely have new people that bring down the average, and then people that have been in it for a long time that just keep coming back. But that's going to be our average, including the employees and then also the owners that come to Wedding
Yeah.
MBA.
Yeah, no, I love that. So this is always a fun question to ask, and you could
Sure.
probably rant on this for quite some time, but what do you think like some of the biggest mistakes that wedding pros make? Like, so you see all of the wedding pros, right? Like I
Yeah.
specifically like hone in on wedding venues because that's my world, but like you see you see the
Right.
behind
Right. Right.
talk about behind the curtain, like, Shannon sees the dirty side of all of this, but, like,
Yeah.
what do you see as some of the bigger mistakes that we as wedding pros make?
Wedding pros make. Think the big thing is not evolving as the industry changes. So, what I notice is people get in a pattern and that happens to work for them for so long. And then they end up blaming the clients or the economy or who knows what, that they're not booking the business. They're not where they used to be during maybe their like prime years of running whatever industry it is that they run. So I think the lack of being ready, just kind of being ready to learn and grow. I mean, we'll even get phone calls from people who get a postcard in the mail and they'll say, I've been doing this for, 25 years. I know everything. And I think that that's the big thing is like, no one knows everything. And I think it's a true sign of intelligence to come at it and say, I know that I don't get it all the time, and as your customers change, I do think it's important to know that you do have something left to learn for sure.
Listen, I would say just a perfect example of this, because I'm in all the venue groups, right? And I coach in there all the time. And like most of the time, I can't even respond because I'm like, I just cannot even. Like, but people that are like, I'm doing the same thing I've been doing for 15 years and I'm not selling, I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, you just said the problem. You're doing the same thing.
Right.
You're selling to a completely different generation. And, even when I started years and years and years ago, like, okay, first of all, there was not even internet. Like, there was, I mean, there was internet,
Right.
but like, we weren't
Yeah,
using social media. You know what I mean? Like, print ads were everything. Like, things
yeah,
have changed so much. And even the way that we tour people has to change. The types of events have to change. And you're exactly right, Shannon. I see the same thing. Like, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? Like, you've got to keep your
exactly.
pulse on what's happening in our industry. And I do think that the Wedding MBA is a great way to do that. I think I loved what you said about the camaraderie of
Yeah.
and the relationships. To me, like, that is such a big thing. I had said that in the social media post that you did for me. Like, I was like, it's like a family reunion, but with people that I wanted to say, I didn't say this, but with like people that you actually want to hang out
Right,
with.
right. Not just one, right. No, I totally could support that. Well, and then I mean, I think what's interesting is, as we talk about change and growth, the other flip side I see is kind of a mistake that wedding pros make is they removed the customer service because they're more robotic in how they're responding and they kind of treat it like a machine, which yeah, it's great to do these things, but I don't think it replaces the face to face, just like our conference, just
Yeah.
like when you do a venue tour, it's not the same vibe. And I think that sometimes wedding pros think, oh, I'm just going to book them by text message. I'm like, it's probably still not going to happen, at least for a huge purchase like venue.
Yep.
So I don't know.
No, it is. Yeah, yeah, definitely spot on. I'm actually like super excited to talk about that at the Wedding MBA, because even the way that we have to tour this generation, the way that you talk to them, the way that they're looking for, I don't want to digress too much, but they actually are really looking for personal connection. This
Yeah,
generation wants it, right? So they have grown up in front of their screen, and a lot of Gen Zs are, I could speak to my kids, like, they're not even on social media. So they're
yeah,
just kind of grossed out by it. And so there is a big influx of people that are looking for authenticity and personal connection with their not just venue, but the whole experience of planning a wedding as a whole. But this really kind of
absolutely.
leads into the next question I wanted to ask you. And I know that if I had to guess, this is probably the hardest part of your job, is cultivating that speaker guy that you're doing, like picking the speakers for the Wedding MBA, sifting through the people that think that they are the world's best educator. And then you get to be the one to let them down.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of go about picking the speakers for, because I know that they are a reflection of the type of event that you're wanting to create as well. So what's your
Yeah.
process there?
Video is really important to us. Referrals are important. So, if I have a trusted speaker like yourself and say you go to a local event and you say, Shannon, you really have to check out the speaker. I mean, we take that very highly. So, but mostly it's just by video submission. So we do ask for about 15 to 45 minutes video link. I don't even really look at the rest of the application until I see the video. So the other parts support what else we see on there. And then also just flexibility in terms of what can that speaker speak on. Sometimes we have a really talented speaker that ends up becoming sort of a one-hit wonder. They get into this niche and I'm like, well, what else do you have? And then they just send me the same thing repackaged like five different ways with five different titles. And it's not that they don't have something valuable to say, but it is that we have to change it up every year. So I think that that's also a challenge when I have someone really talented, but they're not able to speak on variety of topic. It
Mhm.
might be easier to come in and be a speaker on trends, for example, than to be a speaker on something more on the tech side or the business side, because business is like what everyone seems to want to talk about. So just kind of finding your
Mhm.
niche as a speaker and making sure it's not the same niche as everyone else, and then that it's not so much of a niche that five people are going to show up to your
Exactly.
class either, right? So it's like kind of finding a new angle. Also, just looking at it is like a whole kind of cast of characters that you might have too many people that say this year wanted to speak on AI. It's not that they weren't all good at that. It's just that they kind of all picked the same thing and we only need so many classes on it too. So it's not just talent. And then the other thing too is just being mindful of deadlines. So we have a pretty short window of application, and it's usually in like that December, January time period. But we do get requests from people the whole year to speak, and I'm like, sorry, we're filled. So just kind of being mindful of the time frame of applications too.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was actually you mentioned referrals, so I was referred to you. Like people have been telling me for years and years that I need to talk to you and I need to speak. I'm like, no, 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 no. When the time comes, it'll work out when the time comes.
Right.
And I didn't even realize that Terica and Megan Ely had reached out to you about me
Yeah.
speaking. And so it's just in who you know, and I think that just kind of goes back to the fact that I have, we all have really great relationships with one another, and it's not just wedding MBA, but just in general. I think that our industry is so kind and generous, and we do that thing of talking well of someone when they're not in the room or whatever that saying is. And I really do think that that's an important thing for us to do, to be referring people, and not always having the same faces on the stage all the time is refreshing, and you do a great job at that. So, and again, I know it's hard. So it was a couple years ago, I guess, that I did so I was curious if you still do the speak off thing where people come in and do like the rapid fire 3-minute like speaking things.
We do, but we do it mostly online now. So usually
Okay.
it's a way to, I think, make it offered to more people. And then I can go back and look at footage too, because it was kind of very much hot seat and limited time on that. But it was so fun to do it in person. I remember there were some speakers. I still remember like Renee Dalo was like the first time I think that I had met her. She just came, and she's
Did
a
her
theater
thing.
person. So she was ready for her audition. And they were that year, I think we got a few speakers like her that were just really talented. So it was a ton of fun. I'd love to do it again. It just kind
Yeah.
of depends on the timing of the schedule. But
Oh
online
my
we'll
gosh,
we'll
yeah.
do the speak off again and it works out great.
It's so awesome. Yeah, I did the online one and it was definitely really fun. So, okay. So tell me about this. So I know, we're a lot of us are event planners, right? So we understand that the job of Shannon Underwood is not just a couple months of the year and then the rest you're having Mai Tais on the beach. We know that. We know it is a whole year long endeavor.
Yeah.
So what is kind of at this point, we're in the crunch time, like right before MBA, right? So what does kind of the day-to-day look like for you as you're planning this
Yeah.
gigantic
I
event? How many
know.
did
I
we
know.
like last year? How many did you have? It was like what, 6,500 or something?
We had about 6,000 attendees. Yeah.
Okay,
So it was
okay, okay.
huge. And our exhibit floor usually have in the 200s for exhibits. So, and it grows, so we're looking at a lot of growth exhibit floor too. So yeah, my day to day, it's probably like a lot of wedding day to day where it's not the same, right? So for me, a lot of it is booth sales, that's going to be something that's pretty consistent throughout the course of the year, just selling trade show booths because I could get multiple inquiries every week. Some weeks are busier than others. So that's the bulk of my time is trade show sales. And I love that. It's really fun. And I love the idea of anyone else who loves sales and selling. It's nice to
Yeah.
just have that signed contract. It's like the one thing you can actually get off your to-do list and be like that sense of accomplishment. So
Mhm.
that's the bulk of my time. And then really I would say the speakers are definitely a certain season. We're designing a new website. That's a certain time period and time frame. We're going to be updating our certification videos coming up here. So I have a lot of speakers that are going to be contributing. So that's going to be a whole big project. Working with a lot of volunteers right now. So I'm talking with a lot of professors and then just people in the wedding industry that want to volunteer their time and help us with check-in because we can't do it alone because there's only 4 of us. So that gets
Oh
to
my
be too
goodness.
tricky. So every day is a little different. And then attendees, of course, have questions. Exhibitors have questions. So getting those questions answered and like the customer service side of things too.
That's awesome. How are they looking for this coming year? Things kind of looking on par? Are we
Yeah.
seeing some
Yeah.
like, yeah, Good.
We should beat our numbers definitely both on attendees and on exhibits. So
Fantastic.
we're, every day we have registration. So whenever we see those receipts come through, we get excited. We see, what part of the country they're coming from and what's the name of their business. And it definitely puts kind of the human side on things to say, "Hey, we're designing this schedule for so and so from, this part of the country." And it kind
I love that so much.
of
Yeah, so for this year, I am the opening speaker in the venue track on
yay.
Tuesday, which I'm super
Yeah.
excited about. I am like, yeah, I cannot wait to bring the energy to be the first one. I feel like there's just a tiny bit of like you got to have a little bit of that energy to get everyone pumped
Yeah,
up, and
you do.
I'm already ready. I got it. So I'm super excited about that. So
Good.
if you're listening, I would love to have you join that. That's 1 o'clock on Tuesday. And then I have a little wed talk. So this is the other thing that is so cool about the Wedding MBA and the show floor, that there's these little rapid fire 10 to 12 minute presentations. Typically, was it just Wednesday and Thursday, right? There's none on Tuesday.
Yes.
So Wednesday and
No, not on
Thursday.
yeah, just the day
Yeah.
exhibits are open.
Yeah, and those are so fun, and there's just a few, sometimes 100, sometimes 200, like, if
Yeah,
it's a really popular one, people are all squeezed in, and they got their silent disco whatever headsets on, and, those are really, really a fun way to just meet a lot of different wedding professionals as well, and
for sure.
I think most all of those, right, they have booths on the show floor,
They
correct?
do. So that is different than the full length talks are all
Mhm.
audition, right? And then the web talks, you have people that we expect that they know their business and like they're small. Those are pretty niche. We talk about niche, they're pretty niche topics sometimes
Yes.
for the 10-minute talks. And there's some that are really interesting. So when you look in the program, just kind of finding a topic that maybe you wanted to know more about, or sometimes it's maybe a program or software or something where you're like, I want to know how it works, but I don't want to be like in a one-on-one situation. So it gives like a lower pressure way of figuring out pricing and idea of application on things.
I love that. So the last question I had for you, and I also want to kind of answer this too, is what tips do you have for wedding MBA attendees? So let's hear your tip first, and then I'll try not to repeat yours.
I know, I know. So the main thing is to not feel like you have to see everything. It's not, first of all, possible. And it's also going to make you kind of grumpy and not get the most out of the convention. So I do give you permission to come and pick and choose. I mean, I think you should be seeing a class every hour, going into your specialty and just kind of hanging out in there and not unless you have multiple specialties. So that's one thing. Plan out your schedule in advance. You can get to the downloadable schedule now, and that is in its final form. So you should see minimal changes on that at this point. And the other kind of random thing that I would say is footwear. I would just bring a nice pair of comfortable shoes that you can bring along with you because you are walking a lot.
Yeah, yeah. It's even when I always stay at one of the closer hotels, and even going from the hotel to the convention center is a fair walk. And so if I'm wearing my stilettos, I definitely put them in my backpack and
Yes,
put them on once I get there. But I think that, dressing business casual, business attire is good. I think this is maybe just me, but I feel like you're in a better mindset to learn when you're dressed as a professional, and you never know the people that you're going to meet, and the strategic connections that you could have. And I think that would be my main tip for attendees that are listening, is to, in every session that you're in, I know you'll be tired and there'll be times that you don't want to
yeah,
do this. Say hi to the people to your left and to your right. Like, you just have no idea. It could be your next really great, I was going to say pen pal. That just aged me a little bit. But but it could be your next like industry bud, right? Like, I've met so many venue owners, just sitting in a session that we both have something in common, a desire to learn something there. And, you follow each other on social media and stay in touch. And I think it's really a great thing to do. And I think the last thing I would say is, if you're coming as a team, don't just go to all of the same sessions. Like, it's
right.
very tempting. We get like, why is it that even as adults, we get insecure and we're just like, I need my little security blanket team member next to me? But I would say, like Shannon said, print off the online version of the schedule right now. And it's I always did that for my team. And we went through and it was one main copy and we each highlighted and wrote next to the sessions that we wanted to go to. That way I knew that we were kind of dividing up knowledge, and then we kept a shared note in our phones of our takeaways after each session, so that because
Yeah.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
man, I was one of the last speakers at the end of Wedding MBA last year, and I looked out at the audience and I'm like, they're pure jello. They are pure jello. And you do, like, it's just a lot of information in a short amount of time. So I would say, like, keep this note section open on your phone, and in the moment, write down your takeaways from each
Yep.
session. You may say, oh, on the plane, I'm going to do it. Oh, when I get home. No, you won't.
No,
No, you
you
won't.
no,
Just
if you do
like,
it in if you do it in the moment, it's good. And even just having a note, like if you don't want to do it on your phone, having a notebook and writing it down,
exactly.
because then some people will just come back to it later on. But I do think the notes are great. And I think, I mean, I don't know about you as a speaker, but it's a lot of our speakers are very happy and willing to kind of hear from you either at the conference or after. So
Absolutely.
even just going up and introducing yourself, and telling that speaker what you liked about their class and then forming that connection can be really powerful too.
No, absolutely. And don't be afraid to do that. I think I was a little surprised by that. Every time I've spoken, there's always been a line of people
Yeah.
that just want to say thank you, or I want to
Yeah.
connect with you, or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, if you're coming and it's your first time or your fifth time, 10th time, take it to the next level. Like, don't do it the same way you always have, right?
Sure.
Say, like, you know what, this time I'm really going to focus on meeting some other wedding pros.
Yeah.
This time I'm always in the hallway yapping to people because that's my like natural go
Right.
to is to do that. But maybe this time you need to focus. You need to sit
Right.
in some
Right.
sessions and
Right.
actually get the education you're paying for. But the last thing I just wanted you to talk about was the mixer, that every
Yeah.
year you have that at the Hard Rock Cafe. So kind of what is the vision behind that? And just tell us a little bit more about that event.
All right. Well, we love our DJ takeover event is what it becomes, but it starts off as a meet and greet. So where you can actually meet the speakers, you can meet other people in the industry. So it's pretty calm at that point. Attended last year and I was actually just blown away with how much fun it was, how much we liked the venue because it was one of the few where you could just fit everyone there and just seeing people in a more laid back environment where you're able to kind of shake hands with people and the speakers are just very relatable because they're there to help. So definitely go up and say hello to them and then meet other people that you might have recognized in your classes. And then it does become a dance party. So you can either stay or you can go, but either way, just making the commitment to be there, I think you will get more out of the Wedding MBA for sure.
Absolutely. It's interesting. This literally just popped into my mind. I met a couple of venue owner ladies there last year. My husband and I ended up talking to them and doing some like coaching on the side for
Very
like
cool.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
And they actually just contacted us a couple of weeks ago and they were like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember us. There's a lot of people." And I was like, "Absolutely, I
I
remember
do
you."
remember you.
And
Yeah.
she like wanted to reach out and I had a couple questions for me, and of course I helped her out, but it really is such a great place. I will tell you, coming from the East Coast that way, I am typically so tired by the
Yeah.
time it gets to the Rager. Like,
Yeah.
I'm most of the time in
Uh,
bed when everyone is like
yeah.
partying their little hearts out.
Yeah.
But I always love to look at the pictures
I
and be
know.
like, "Oh, wow."
Each DJ does a small set, so you could just make the commitment. I'm just gonna do one set, this
Okay,
year.
okay. Okay, I hear you, Shannon. I hear you. I hear you. That's so funny. It really is, I will tell you, there's a lot of different ways in which you could absorb education. And, the Wedding MBA has become kind of a cornerstone in our space as one of the top places to go to get a variety of voices and different types and for all wedding pros, right?
Yeah,
We've got all this stuff out there just for wedding planners, and we got all this stuff out there and it's building for wedding venues, and we got the DJ conferences, but this one is kind of like that big gathering of all of us together
for sure.
where which is I think really really important for us to have. So I'm really grateful to you for what you have created there at the Wedding MBA. We know that it is a lot of work, a lot of work. So if you see Shannon running around in her sparkly shoes and black outfit or glitzy dress, just say a little prayer for her as she
Thank
runs
you.
by and just,
Thank you.
just
That I
know
don't
like
trip,
she's,
right, on my way to work. That's always my concern, but yes, that I don't trip.
my gosh,
Oh, I love it.
it's all of our nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So, so grateful for you in this event that you've created. And so, as we wrap up today, if you're listening and you're interested in getting a ticket, just go to weddingmba.com and be sure and grab your ticket as soon as possible. The hotels are actually already filling, so
Yeah.
be sure and get your hotel. Transportation there is so easy. You don't need to rent a car. There's just no need to do that. Just endless Ubers and
Yes.
train and all of the things. So I really hope that if you have never attended, that maybe that this will be your year to attend the Wedding MBA, and it's not too late to get your ticket and join the fun. So thank you again for joining me today, Shannon. And for my viewers and my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you next time on the Venue Success Podcast.